Hi, everybody. I hope everyone is doing well. We'll just wait for a couple of minutes. Make sure those who are coming in will be in. Just showing up little by little. Last time we were talking about some of the questions by Carl Martin from Nashville. And just like to make a few more comments on some of these things, some of the questions that she's asked. Maybe, how can I do this? Okay, I'll give it a try. You sometimes say, if we can take a step beyond ourselves, it helps others who are similar, have similar personality traits. Is that a frequency similarity? And the previous question before that, she says, in a talk from a past year, you told a person he had 2 or 3 frequencies. Still pondering that. Is it part of broadening? This frequency thing, array thing, is a real dilemma. It makes so many people feel very comfortable if they can perceive colors that are within the spectrum of our human condition. Our dilemma is that in discussing colors in our human condition, we basically ignore frequencies that are on a more subtle level. To begin with, to even perceive colors on our particular level of engagement as human beings, you have a certain level of frequency, or let's say of clairvoyance, that occurs within our particular internalizations, our eyes, what we perceive. It's a big dilemma. We start doing this and we start being diverted from the real purpose of engaging with higher states, or the presence of a higher, very much higher state. However, that's not going to stop people from having this particular beginnings of clairvoyance. It's meant to be there for the purpose of reassuring us that there is some particular development in our so-called spiritual growth. But you can be clairvoyant and not very spiritual at all. It's part of an aspect of metaphysics. Meta meaning beyond the physical, what we in particular see. And in fact, it can be very tantalizing to the personality. And it's kind of good, bad, right? Not right, wrong, just there. And there's a tremendous influx of this idea, and I don't see it as negative. I just see it as it diverts us away from what might be important. But if you're looking at a personality, Carol, straight on, then, and most of us are in relationship to what we call spiritual sort of thing, what we're really looking at is proofs that people are really spiritual. At a higher state, these proofs are not relevant, because there's a subtlety beyond this kind of clairvoyance that relates primarily to the chakras itself. themselves, sorry. And that is, from my point of view, more important than the ability to perceive something that is perhaps some of the early stages of development. However, nonetheless, if you want to look around and find some stuff, I did mention this before. Look to books by Dion Fortune, Alice Bailey, Anna Besant, I think, says some stuff about it. Many theosophical backgrounds. The Edgar Cayce grouping talks a lot about the clairvoyance and what colors mean, and as well as Alice Bailey. And they're not the same. The reason why they're not the same is that no negativity involved. One is looking at emotional background. It considers to be emotional background. Another is looking at rays as if they are basically energies that are emitted or show up in an aura or energy field around the body. That's what an aura really basically is. And in fact, from time to time, as you grow, you will perceive those things. If they are relative to the personality's versionings of frequencies, which are colors, then you will see a certain frequency. Now, as soon as you do that, you're going to look for meaning for them from someone else's perspective. It's how it works. So there are rules and regulations about what this means and what that means and what something else might be. In fact, those rules and regulations, like all rules and regulations, are maybe slightly non-inclusive, not respectful of internal engagements within the personality that have been going on in a person's life with a particular frequency. Another person has the same frequency, which is dominant, and it doesn't look the same. Therefore, an individual will decide which is better and which is worse, or not as good. These things are personality-oriented things. If you want to just prove that, it's really easy. All you have to do is engage with life with about 10 or 15 people, and they'll come up with ideas about people which may be true or may not be true. No understanding of circumstances that relate to the individual whatsoever. And they're not even talking about color here. We're just talking about taking a look at a person, giving an assessment of what that person might be like. It can happen to you, it can happen to anybody, doesn't matter. But that is an assessment process. Coming up with ideas about what you happen to see, yes, can be an assessment process. It's what we have as human beings, and it's not highly developed. Sorry. It's personally developed. And that's what we have to work with. So in that case, you have to leave a door open, an open mind, an open understanding, a willingness to go beyond that if something else doesn't make sense to you. But we're kind of rule oriented. So if we learn one schema, then we are entitled in a kind of a way. We base our version of what we assess on that schema. That entitles us to be right in some way. Frequencies are a lot more complicated than that. One single thought in your mind will change what the field that's around you. One sense of loving will change the field. Even if you're a miserable SOB, pardon the expression, one actual thought of loving can change that. Okay, a thought of loving may be a thought of loving of your own self. That will change the field. It's loving. Yeah, I know it's subtle. And then an engagement with a recognition of something that touches you really deeply inside. Some people call the soul, or a frequency that comes in because you suddenly are struck with a compassionate response inside, and you don't know where it came from. That's an act of love. It will change the whole field of you. At the same time, there are various versions of subtlety that relate to a single frequency, from the coarser to the more sublime. Our ability to perceive this is fairly minimalized. No offense to anybody. Wherever you find references to these things, remember what you're doing is stoking the fire of the personality. And rightly so, that's how we're all trained. We're trained to do so. And we will do so because it makes us feel valued and comfortable. And then we use our solar plexus focused, naturally normal verbalizations that are relatively attempting to find a balance, each and every one in its own way, and engage in a thing called, with others, in a thing called personality. And this is what we do. So, in beginning to perceive an essence which is beyond this place of reference, which we all would like to have little pieces and parts of, because it makes us know that we're progressing, and it's all exciting if we can do this or that or the other thing. And then we're talking about frequency, so I have to talk about color and frequency. It's measured in all kinds of other ways as well. Each one of us have rules and regulations that we believe and know for sure are valuable relative to us. Someone else is bad because he did a thing. But if you do it in a different ways for a different purpose from your perspective, then it's okay. These are affecting the frequencies that are engaging with us all. An ultimate reference point is, in a relationship to frequencies, is that there's a flow that can operate through us that has nothing to do with elevating the personalities or deflating the personalities process or assessment of how another person is. Yet it affects us. It's often called soul or universal flow or the presence of a higher state. Now, what you call that higher state will be relative to you. What I would call it would be relative to me. But it is perceivable within the system, but not relative to the personality. It really affects the personality in a way that it makes the personality unable to act the way it normally acts. There's another question, I think, that someone asks, what is it? Soul infused. individual, our personality. Well, we're kind of talking about that. Our dilemma with these things is it really reassures us to know stuff. And it's the nature of our whole way of living. So think of this in a kind of a strange way. I think I'm answering this question, these two questions. Individuals can have as many as 7 frequencies, 7 chakras. Most individuals relate to their personality orientations as primary in their relationship with life. So, root center, nature of our physical forms, our physical personalities, emotional centers, the nature of how we can intensify and de-intensify and engage and act differently, pausing a bit, not necessarily intensifying the coarser aspects of our relationship. When we can soften them down just a little bit and begin to puzzle and wonder what the heck is going on inside of us that causes this kind of response. And learning how to soften that down, then we begin in a kind of a way to allow ourselves, not all the time perhaps, but often to slow things down a little bit so that we don't jump to conclusions. Because that jump will be there because of the coarser responses that we have within us to enable us to survive in our world the way we believe the images of us should be maintained. Not devaluing here, just living. And of course, beginning to be aware of how we do that and not necessarily agreeing with it. But of course, we have our models. Our models have been how our parental background, how our friends, how the people in the community, how they operate. But God, nobody is perfect. So these frequencies are constantly increasing, decreasing, changing their position in a continuum of intensity. All frequencies can be intensified. All frequencies can be softened. All frequencies can mix together. Think of this. Wow. If anyone has tried to be an artist in any kind of a manner, try mixing green and orange and blue and red and browns and see what you get. It's just a mixture of color. And those colors are smudgy. So, do you think it's possible that we might be from time to time smudgy in relating to the frequencies that are willful in us, that are highly practiced, intensified under conditions where that intensification might be very valuable for purposes that relate to these planes? And the protective aspects of the great need to continue on with the same images that we have in our mind that we don't even know we have, or if we know we have them, continue to use them, even if no one can tell what they are. You hope. So it's more complicated than these 7 frequencies. Some say 9, some say 8, some say 12, some say 19. Oh, there's all kinds of stuff out there. And it's a little bit confusing. So if you can engage slightly deeper than those in a subtlety that relates to where that field is coming from, energies through those vortices, Sephiroth, that we talk about, it would be helpful and fortunate for us, right in the midst of our being held in the belly of our parental background, subtlety begins. It's a field sense. Often looked down by people because of the great belief we have is whatever we see is valuable, and we know what the truth is because we saw it. Talk to 25 people at the scene of an accident and see what you get. The scene of real life is not an accident, but each one has a story to tell based on their considerable view of how the reality was that was experienced by all 25. This continues on. It's not a biggie. Everybody has this same kind of way of looking at life. You've got to consider a little bit deeper. This sensing of this presence begins to be stronger. However, it carries with us a view about what chakra is more important than the other. From my perspective, all of them are. How you use them in your secret self is just as important as how the overt self expresses them. You can't fool that flow. With that, I would say that everyone listening is a human being. Everyone speaking is a human being. It's how it works here. The issue in this great question of Carol's, it's always sitting there. And it's sitting there because it's an important question. And the question is about the value that we place on ourselves and the value that you had because you know something and do something. Because you know something and do something, your interaction with that deeper level is related directly to your personality. It's how we all are. At some point, there is a thing, initial stage, which is profound, maybe not initial, but among the initial stages of movement into a higher state, is a thing called, if you believe in soul fusion, interaction, the synthesis that occurs between that flow of energy coming in relative to what we can handle on these planes. What we can handle on these planes is not as much as our hope, wishes, and desires to handle. But nonetheless, each is able to handle a certain amount. And with that handling, we affect other people. If you can handle a little bit more, then that will affect others. I'm not talking here about intensity. I'm talking about subtlety and understanding and the movement towards being willing to engage with that perception, that presence. Very old definition of soul infused individuals is you're not going to like this. You do what the soul tells you, and it has nothing to do with your personality, wants, wishes, and desires. This is not an easy road for folks, because their main focal point is in doing what they believe they need to do. And rightly so. This is where we are. This is the level of function that we have. And that flow of energy, or various frequencies that can come into you at this point in your internal development, because it's internal development we're talking about, not what you have in your memory bank. We're talking about soul infusion here, and we're talking about certain frequencies that relate to higher states operating through into these systems. All of us, every single person, and I don't care, even the person you don't like, even the person you really love, all of those folks have that flow operating through them in a manner that relates to engaging with how you believe you think you need to be recognized by you or others, if that's the primary goal for everyone. And in doing so, all of us fundamentally are using energy intensity for a purpose that relates to our own self-interest. Usable on these levels, as these levels demand we use them for shelter, for survival, and the personality's rendering of a form that is imagined to be valuable in the eyes of others. At that inner level, that soul-infused level, the soul itself, or the energy itself that is accumulated in its reservoir, all the lives you've had and how you've been able to handle this and that and the other thing, are really, in a kind of a way, in you trying to find a way of engaging with these planes where the soul can be helpful through you, not you use the soul's force for your purposes. This is totally and completely against everything that we have learned, kind of. But you can still do a job. You can live life, be happy. If you choose to be miserable, you can live life and be miserable. But nonetheless, these are sometimes not choices, they're reflexes. And we understand this, and these are frequencies. You shift one frequency at that level, and it affects others who are similar to you. In frequency, yes, Carol, no doubt about it. But also in a level of subtlety within that frequency, so you can be helpful to others by a single act of service to yourself, meaning trying to help you as if you were a young person still growing, not a person reified into an identification that can't be moved because you know you can do almost anything rightly according to your so-called wishes, desires. This is not a new idea, by the way. idea has been discussed and talked about forever. In a particular way that relates to attempting to find some perfect personality rendering. And it's not real. There's no perfect personality rendering. But soul infusion, you want to do this, and the soul moves in, or that energy moves in to attempt to help you to do something different so you can understand the need to do so. And sometimes it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And sometimes, as in many folks who are ill, you believe it's you, a soul, and it's really you. So there's coarseness and there's subtlety in everything. If you watch fairly closely to how you act out and how you engage, you'll see it everywhere. If you do see it everywhere, you might jump to not wanting to see it everywhere. This would be the most natural thing in the world. Why should I see stuff within me that I don't want to see? You would see stuff within you don't want to see so that you can gentle yourself down and not do so much reacting to it within you, because reacting to it in a strong way hurts you. Because you might be angry or resentful or regretful, and then you start being like that all the time, and then you're not contributing to the helping of you. You're contributing to the beating up of you. The other opposite thing is that there's whatever you do is your business, and it's the right thing to do, and you're the only one in the world that has the right knows what to do for you. And as a matter of fact, we live partly that way ourselves. But these questions are very pointed, and they're good ones. And the one, I think it was Barbara Newport, about soul infused. Soul infusion is bantered about like crazy, as if people know what it means. I'm soul infused now, blah, 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 blah. No, soul infused person would not say that. It's against anything, because the first thing that happened is 15,000 people would be saying, show us what that means. Because that's not how it works. And the other idea is that we live in a world right now, and have been for a long time, where the human being is more important than any of the gods in pagan history, and more and more and more in meaning the focus is on the human being to take care of itself. And well, it should, the best it can. But there is something else going on. And with all due respect to everybody, the more you get hooked into the importance of some of the incidental things in so-called spiritual life or material life, the more idealized you become in your own way, unknowingly most of the time. There are others, just like you and I, who do that from time to time. You have to be a little bit aware of that. And when you do the best you can to pull away from it. That will help others. Because out of nowhere, they'll have an idea in their mind that they just did something that they never knew they did before. And they'll try to hide it from themselves. But other people will know because they have it too. And they'll assess based on what they don't want to see in themselves much of the time. But they won't know that. This is uncomfortable. And then if you look at the comfortable things, each one of these frequencies that Carl may be talking about in another could be at different levels within their internal development. And that's wonderful, because if you and I have a frequency that is not very well developed, and we meet people along the way where they have similar frequencies and they're more developed, there is an emission, a transmission, an effect coming into us from the causal form, or from that expressing form of consciousness that emits from us all the time. Example, heat comes off our body. Unless you're not alive, it emits just heat. Emotion is consistently, it is diverse, tremendous engagements with emotion. Someone can say, look at him, he's yelling and screaming, he's angry, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, how do you know? Well, I would never get angry at that, but I'd be angry at something else, but it was really worthwhile. It was important then. And we have a whole plethora of emotional engagements. Along with that, in our minds, this little box through our heads, and our nervous system is affected. But in our heads, there's all kinds of stuff that runs through it. We take it for granted. You don't like some stuff, you do like some stuff. You can't figure out why, and you don't bother trying to figure it out because it's all this stuff flitting through. You walk into a crowded room, you got all kinds of stuff going on. You take a measure of the room, whether you know it or not. You walk in, you respond emotionally. You consider that emotion comes up, and you have a dialogue going on about how you are in that room, how they are in that room, what you want to do, what you don't want to do, what you want to go home, you want to stay, all kinds of stuff. You want to look for a friend, whatever. This is a human condition. These are all frequencies firing. Someone beside me has a different frequency dominance, but you can engage with them. You attempt to try to understand what's going on, or not. Or you just say, that's dried up. Let's walk over here and talk to somebody else. But you're affected by all kinds of frequencies and intensities of those frequencies and purposes behind them that come out of this little system, because this emission or transmission is going on all the time. Where it counts is if you are in one area paying a little attention and try to be helpful to yourself, because you're the steward of you the best you can. None of us get it perfectly. That may help another who hasn't learned how to do that a little bit yet. because you slowed something down. It wasn't a reflex that is normal for you 20 years ago or 30 years ago. You slowed something down. Affected that particular dominant frequency in you that is engaging. The energies that are engaging in you, coming from different centers. And it's changed. In that higher state, you can't fool it. It knows where there's change. And it knows where there's no change. Knows where you replay you, just in a different way. Knows that. Can't fool it. It's part of you. Now, this is one way to look at these things, of course. You're all intelligent. Swing it through your own mind. Try to understand broader, no matter what you come up with. The impact of reading material is always with you. All of us. Trying to make sense of things in a broader manner. But the experience of that flow is not sense-making. It's perception and respect for a budding individual, no matter how long it takes. That's you. That's me. That's everyone. Disrespecting other people because they have some stuff that may be similar to you and you don't know it yet. Or they may be hurtful to you when they do the thing that you do from time to time. We don't necessarily see that all the time. We don't see that, oh God, wow, do I do something? Well, not like that. I might do it like this from time to time. But even if you do from time to time, and it's validating from your perspective, it hurts other people. And we tend to do that whether we know it or not. Learning how not to do that, we can easily decide. It's not our business because we've already logged in to how we need to be. You are disrespecting yourself because you are an able, functional being on these planes in a process towards handling more of that presence than you currently do. Subtler, gentler, respectful, and kinder, even though you'll mess up from time to time. And there'll be a certain amount of glee in self-validation with respect to some of these mess-ups. It's there because you're reassuring yourself that you need to do what you need to do to maintain the image that you believe is valuable for you. Everyone has experience in this. But each one thinks their experience is different than everybody else's. Maybe, but not really. So when you're looking at frequency, and when you're looking at even a level of clairvoyance that allows you to perceive those things from time to time, don't hold on to it. If you perceive things, notice it back away. Be the student as opposed to the person who comes up with the right idea about what that needs to be. That way you'll learn. Others have learned that way and made assessments based on their learning. Don't be afraid to read that stuff, but don't be afraid not to necessarily fully take it in as the only truth of how things should be. It's not real. There are so many different subtleties involved with these frequencies. And in the early days of clairvoyance, you will be shown stuff, if you do go that route, that will hold you as a personality, believe me, and you will not want to budge from it because you'll get to be known for it. Letting it go is tremendously different and difficult because the personality is naturally a cohesive form that is something we use here on these planes to be valuable in some manner. This is the same for everybody. And we'll hold to it. If you have capacity, try to understand it in the broadest way you can. Gently, respectfully, broader. What could be mixed up in that frequency? Because if you come up with an assessment, that means you've just assessed the person. And higher states don't assess the person. Through life, that person is helped to help themselves in a kind of a way. But this is subtle. So perceiving these things is not a big deal. Not perceiving them, one could say, is annoying and a big deal. Once you do begin to perceive them, treat it as if that was just a second or two, and what can I learn from this? And why is this being shown to me? And then continue on, and you're growing. It will be helpful to you. It will be respectful to you. Getting to a place where you are fully influenced by a higher state, physically, emotionally, and mentally, is a bit disturbing. You may want to go and do something because you really enjoy doing it. And you go and you do something totally different that you're really not interested in. But you happen to meet somebody there that you haven't seen in 30 years. And the purpose was to tie up a loose end. And you won't figure it out. A loose end meaning old timelines. Okay, now, don't need to do them anymore. Don't need to do that one anymore. It's a complicated system. It sounds really simple when people explain it from time to time, but it's tremendously subtle. An engagement with higher states is tremendously subtle. I remember an individual I used to know who used to think that had to be strong and powerful in expression, really strong. Years ago, probably 45 years ago. And I said, this doesn't make any sense to me. Even though there's intensity there, lots of power there, but the relationship with that higher state is subtle. So therefore, the gentleness needs to be more and more blended with that power, so-called. Many frequencies blend together with each other. And if you have used colors, you know this to be true. You can see greens in gray. You can see reds in gray or blues in gray. You can look at these colors differently because they're influenced by other frequencies and understand differently the subtleties of an individual. How difficult it is for individuals to deal with certain frequencies that they've not dealt with as much before, or that they have been really powerfully respected because they had these frequencies before. It's hard to let go of them in a new body, in new circumstances. Nonetheless, those people are still valuable. Each and every one of us have that kind of thing that can happen in our lives. I hope I helped a little bit with that, Carol. You probably hope you don't shake your head and say, Ron, would you repeat that, please? I think that would be just keeping in mind that subtlety and the continuum of all frequencies and the linking together of those frequencies so that they can be used. For example, an old frequency from an old time where you've been quite able with it may be able to operate through you if you can handle not reacting to it too much. This is not so simple. So let me say this. Many frequencies can operate through a single center, a single chakra or zephyr, in a different mode, depending on an individual that they meet. This is always a little bit more difficult for the personality to handle because they are naturally comforted by an engagement that is familiar to them. In other words, you're familiar with how you think you need to be, and others are familiar with how they think they need to be. Then another frequency operates through for a short period of time. Excuse me. And that changes your view of you for a few seconds. If you're attentive, if you can actually allow yourself to see that. Or you make up a story. The stories are always there. They're the way we communicate with each other. You make up a story that makes that one fit. Or there is a story that makes that one fit. And we don't understand it, but it is a real story. And sometimes it isn't real. It's the way we live life. And it's the way we grow. I wish you all really well. I think we'll stop for meditating right now, and we'll meditate for roughly 50 to 55 minutes. Please take care of yourselves. A lot of not so good stuff out there. And just enjoy. Have a good evening. Now we'll just begin to do the balancing and grounding in your own way. And in the next couple of weeks, we won't be doing this, but please meditate at that time. And I wish everybody well.